All right, continuing from the last video that I just did. So now we're gonna make another triangle. This is still 1. This is going to be a pi over 4, which means this is also pi over 4, which means these two sides are the same length. And on these ones, it's a square root of 2 equals 1. I'm going to divide by the square root of 2, and I'm going to rationalize. So that's my a value. And on this one, a is both the height and the length. So the location of this point right here is the square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. So on my unit circle, I'm going to be right here. That's going to be pi over 4. And it's going to be square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. The next one that I'm going to do, you guessed it, this is going to be the pi over 3, and this is going to be the pi over 6. This is still 1. So I just solved that a minute ago, but my triangle was the other direction. And I know that this one that's across from the pi over 6 was 1/2. So here, this one is going to be 1/2 because that's across from the pi over 6. And this one's going to be the square root of 3 over 2. So on this point right here, I'm going to be at 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. So on my unit circle, that's going to be pi over 3. And it's going to be 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Now the cool thing about the unit circle is everything kind of repeats because we're going at the same units in each direction. Meaning this point right here is the same as this, except for my x value is negative here. X's are always negative in this quadrant, but the y's are still positive. So this one's going to be negative square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. And this one's going to be negative square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. And I'm just going to keep going around the circle. So now this one's going to be negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. This one's going to be negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. This one's going to be negative 1/2, negative square root of 3 over 2. This one's going to be positive 1/2, negative square root of 3 over 2. Because my x's are positive here and my y's are negative. This one, square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. And this one, square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. So I filled all those values in. Now I need to continue the angles. So I'm going to draw it on another one because I don't want to mess up my beautiful unit circle. I'm always starting here. So if I go to this point right here, I'm now going, if you think about it, this was right here was pi over 2, and right here was pi over 6. So I'm going to add these two together. Pi over 6 plus pi over 2. I got to get a common denominator. So I'm going to turn this into 3 pi over 6. And this stays the same, plus pi over 6 is 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3, reducing it. So this guy right here is going to be 2 pi over 3. This one right here is going to be, it's going to be pi over 4 plus pi over 4. Why did I write pi over 6? Plus pi over 2, which is going to be pi over 4 plus 2 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 4. This is going to be pi over 3 plus pi over 2, which is going to be 2 pi over 6 plus 3 pi over 6, which is 5 pi over 6. So this one's 5 pi over 6. This one is pi. Oh, I'm off the screen. Sorry, guys. So this one is pi. This one's 5 pi over 6. Another way to think of this is 6 pi over 6, which makes this 7 pi over 6, which makes this 8 pi over 6, which makes this 9 pi over 6, or 3 pi over 2, which makes this 10 pi over 6, or 5 pi over 3, which makes this 11 pi over 6, which makes this 12 pi over 6, or 2 pi, if we go all the way around. Or if we don't start at all, it's also 0 pi. So it gets both of those measurements. Now for these ones, this was 3/4 pi, this is 4/4 pi, this is going to be 5/4 pi, 6/4 pi, 7/4 pi. So that's the unit circle, and that's coming up with it. But we need to be able to know these things pretty quickly. We need to be able to do these pretty rapidly. So we're going to practice these a couple different times.